The morning began like any other day on Earth. People went to work, traffic moved slowly through busy streets, and students hurried to their classes. No one expected anything unusual, and the world felt calm in its familiar rhythm. But everything changed within minutes when the sky over several continents filled with strange lights that moved in patterns no aircraft could match. At first, people thought it was some kind of natural event, or maybe a rare meteor shower. But soon the lights grew larger, brighter, and closer, until even the governments realized this was not a normal day at all. The first clear image came from a satellite camera that showed enormous alien ships appearing from a jump point near the moon. They were massive, shaped like long silver arcs with glowing blue engines. Hundreds of them emerged, each one big enough to hold a small city. The world froze in fear. Someone in a control room whispered that this might be the beginning of an invasion, and people all across the planet waited for news with shaking hands. In Washington, Evan Brooks rushed into the Disaster Response Center. He had dealt with earthquakes, fires, floods, and storms, but nothing had prepared him for this. He stared at the huge screen where the ships were being tracked. More ships appeared every few seconds, forming a silent and threatening cloud around Earth. Evan turned to his team and tried to stay calm. He spoke slowly and told them to keep communication open with other countries. He was known for his steady voice and clear thinking. And even now, he showed no fear. People trusted him, and that helped ease the tension in the room. Across the city, Lena Morris sat in her office at the Space Research Center. She had spent years studying signals from distant galaxies. She recognized the ship designs from old classified files that mentioned an empire called the Zareth Dominion. She knew they were powerful and feared by many species, but what she could not understand was why they had come here so suddenly and in such massive numbers. She hurried to join a special meeting with scientists and government officials. They tried to predict what the aliens wanted, but no one had a clue. Some feared the planet would be conquered. Others believed Earth had unknowingly violated some cosmic rule. Lena watched the skies through the window and wondered if this would be the day humanity changed forever. In another part of the world, Aidan Clark stood with his UN peacekeeping unit near an airfield designated as a safe zone. They had been ordered to stay ready in case the visiting ships landed. Aidan held his helmet under his arm, listening to the nervous chatter of soldiers around him. Despite the uncertainty, he tried to stay hopeful. He believed that whatever was coming, humans would face it together. Meanwhile, Nora Hale, a medical researcher, was on her way to a health facility when she saw the alien ships in the morning sky. She felt her heart race but also felt a spark of curiosity. She had always dreamed of meeting life from other worlds, but she never imagined it would happen like this. She knew that if anyone needed medical help, she wanted to be there. By now, millions of people across the world had stopped what they were doing. Everyone stepped outside their homes, offices, and cars to stare at the sky. The alien ships began forming large clusters above major oceans, almost as if they were waiting for something. A strange stillness came over the world. Then a message arrived. Every television, phone, radio, speaker, and electronic device buzzed with a deep, cold voice. It sounded emotionless, like a machine reading from a script. The voice identified itself as a representative of the Zareth Dominion and claimed that Earth had been chosen for a lesson. They accused humanity of being too compassionate, too emotional, too protective of weaker species. They said this softness made Earth dangerous to the natural balance of galactic rule. To teach Earth a lesson, the Dominion announced that they would unload 6 million refugees from their territories. These refugees were unwanted, abandoned, and considered useless by the Dominion. The voice said Earth was now responsible for their survival. The message ended without further explanation. People stared at their screens in shock. 6 million refugees. It was a number so large that it felt unreal. Governments argued that this was unfair, cruel, and impossible to manage. Many feared that the refugees might be dangerous or infected with alien diseases. Some demanded that Earth refuse them, but no one could stop the ships. Within an hour, dozens of massive carriers broke formation and descended through the atmosphere. The sky turned orange from the heat of their entry, and many people ran for cover, thinking the ships would attack, but instead, the carriers slowed and hovered quietly over isolated open areas. Giant doors on their sides slid open, and ramps extended to the ground. Evan, along with emergency teams, was one of the first to arrive at a landing zone. What he saw made him freeze where he stood. The refugees were not soldiers, not criminals, not dangerous creatures. They were families. They were frightened individuals from many species, some tall, some small, some with scales or fur, some with delicate limbs. Many looked sick or starved. Children clung to older beings. Some could barely walk. Evan stepped forward, raised his hands slowly, and tried to show he meant no harm. The refugees watched him with tired, fearful eyes. They had clearly suffered before arriving on Earth. Lena arrived shortly after with a small team of linguists who tried to communicate with the refugees. It was slow and confusing, but they found small ways to understand each other: gestures, drawings, simple sounds. Lena realized that the refugees came from different worlds and spoke different languages. Some had been in Dominion camps for years. Others had fled wars. Their stories were heartbreaking, but they were too exhausted to explain much. Aiden and his unit were moved to protect the landing zones. Some human groups gathered nearby, demanding the aliens be sent away. A few shouted angrily, while others watched quietly. But Aiden and the peacekeepers stood between them and the refugees, making sure no harm came to anyone. Aiden knew fear could turn people cruel, but he also knew that fear could be healed with understanding. Nora joined the medical teams who rushed to set up emergency tents. She treated a young Surian child who had a deep scar on his arm. The child looked terrified at first, but when Nora gently wrapped his wound and offered him water, he relaxed. She realized that the refugees were not dangerous, they were simply hurt and abandoned. All around the world, similar scenes unfolded. The Dominion carriers dropped refugees in large groups and then rose back into the sky without a word. They did not wait, did not care, and did not look back. Once all the carriers had emptied, the ships left Earth's atmosphere and vanished into the stars. It felt like Earth had been given a test without warning. People watched the sky slowly clear, and a strange silence fell over the planet. The air felt heavy with responsibility. Late in the evening, world leaders met through urgent video calls. They argued over resources, safety, and responsibility. But Evan stepped forward during a global broadcast and spoke calmly about the situation. He reminded everyone that these refugees were living beings, scared and alone. If Earth refused to help them, they would die. His voice spread across the world and touched many hearts. Lena worked with scientists to design translation tools. Aiden ensured that peace was maintained at the landing sites. Nora cared for the growing number of injured refugees. Volunteers from across the world gathered, offering food, blankets, and shelter. Many people who had been fearful at first became compassionate after seeing the refugees up close. Humanity was not perfect, and there were disagreements everywhere. But something stronger was rising beneath the fear. People felt a responsibility, a sense of unity. The Dominion had wanted to punish Earth by giving it a burden. But instead, it awakened something powerful. It awakened the human desire to protect those who needed help the most. The first night after the arrival was emotional. Refugees sat with humans around temporary fires, sharing small bits of food and warm blankets. Children from both sides stared at each other with curiosity. They did not understand the politics or danger. They only saw new friends. As dawn approached, Evan walked along a line of tents and saw that the refugees were beginning to rest. Aiden stood guard nearby, nodding silently. Lena sat with a small group of refugees, drawing shapes in the sand to communicate. Nora checked her supplies, preparing for another long day of medical work. Earth had never faced anything like this before. 6 million lives had been thrown onto the planet as a punishment. But instead of reacting with cruelty, people made a simple choice. They chose compassion. And as the sun rose over the quiet fields, the Dominion ships were gone. But something new and powerful had started on Earth. A connection. A promise. A quiet belief that humanity would not fail those who needed them. This was only the beginning. The days after the refugee arrival passed slowly but felt full of movement. Earth was no longer the same. Every country had created temporary shelters, and huge groups of humans and refugees lived side by side while officials decided what to do next. Many people still felt unsure or frightened, but curiosity and kindness slowly softened the fear. Evan Brooks walked through one of the largest temporary camps built in an empty desert area. He had barely slept since the refugees arrived. His team worked with international groups to organize food, water, and tents. The camp was enormous, large enough to hold nearly 200,000 beings. From above, it looked like a small city. Evan watched a group of Syrian refugees gather near a water tank. Their skin shined with a soft blue tone under the sun, and they moved with slow, gentle motions. They reminded him of amphibians from Earth, but their eyes were larger and full of emotion. He saw two young Syrians helping an elderly one walk to the shade. Even though they were tired and weak, they still cared for each other. Lena Morris arrived at the camp soon after, carrying equipment packed in large cases. She had been working non-stop with language experts to create tools for basic communication. The languages of the refugees were very different from human languages, and each species had its own sounds and gestures. But Lena believed communication could bridge everything. She walked past a group of Varellans, tall, insect-like engineers with long limbs and delicate wings folded against their backs. They sat together, repairing broken pieces of equipment they had brought from the ships. Humans were amazed because the Varellans worked with incredible skill, shaping metal with their hands and creating small devices out of almost nothing. Lena sat down with a translation pad she had developed overnight. It used small pictographs and simple words. She approached a Syrian elder and showed the pad. The Syrian touched the screen and gave a soft humming sound. Lena smiled because she understood it meant gratitude. Slowly, communication was becoming easier. Aidan Clark spent each day patrolling the outer areas of the camp with his peacekeeping team. He tried to keep the atmosphere calm. Most people behaved peacefully, but there were a few humans who came near the camp to shout angry things or demand the refugees be removed. Aidan stood between them and the refugees, keeping order without using force. He tried to talk to those who came with anger, hoping to change their minds. One afternoon, as he walked along the fence line, he saw a group of children, 3 humans, and 2 young Kisotes, sitting together in the sand, drawing pictures. The Kisotes were small, furry beings with big, gentle eyes and soft voices. They looked like a mix between small mammals and scholars. Aidan felt a warm feeling in his chest as he watched them. Children did not see species, danger, or politics. They saw new friends. Nora Hale worked in a medical tent where hundreds of refugees lined up for treatment. Many had wounds, infections, or malnutrition. The sight often broke her heart. She moved from one patient to another, giving medicine, checking temperatures, and using adapted human equipment to match alien biology. It was challenging, but it was meaningful work. One day, she found a young Varellan sitting alone behind the tent. His wings drooped, and he looked faint. When Nora approached, he tapped his chest gently. A sign of weakness. She guided him inside and checked his pulse. She realized he was dehydrated and suffering from a respiratory infection. She gave him fluids and used a modified oxygen mask that had been adjusted for Varellan lungs. The young refugee looked at her with surprise when he began to feel better. He had probably never received gentle care from anyone outside his own species. Nora smiled and told him he would be all right. But while many good things were happening, trouble grew in other places. Not all humans welcomed the refugees. Some groups claimed Earth was being punished and forced to take in beings who did not belong here. These groups spread fear online and organized protests that grew louder each day. A few even tried to break into camps, to cause harm or create chaos. Aidan's unit stopped one such attempt during the night. A small group of masked men tried to force their way through the fence near the desert camp. They held sticks and shouted threats. Aiden and his team quickly surrounded them and formed a barrier without drawing weapons. He stepped forward and spoke calmly. He explained that the refugees were not enemies and needed protection. The men shouted back angrily, claiming Earth would be destroyed because of them. But Aiden did not step aside. His steady voice and strong stance discouraged them. After a tense standoff, they finally left. But Aiden knew more trouble would come. Meanwhile, Evan worked day and night sending reports to world leaders. Many nations argued about responsibility. Some said they did not have enough resources to support the refugees. Others worried about disease or conflict. A few countries refused to let any refugees enter their borders at all. But ordinary people continued to surprise everyone. Families came to volunteer. Farmers donated food. Teachers offered to help children from different species learn basic communication. Scientists shared knowledge, and engineers built better shelters. Humanity began to show why compassion was its greatest strength. The refugees also began to contribute. One early morning, a human water treatment plant near a refugee camp broke down. Engineers predicted it would take a week to fix, but a group of Varellans approached Evan and offered their help. They examined the damage and, within 2 hours, built a new filtration system using scrap materials. It purified water even better than the original machine. People cheered when they saw clear water flowing again. In another camp, the Syrians began helping with irrigation. They had unique knowledge of water systems from their home world. With simple tools, they created channels that saved thousands of liters of water each day. This helped nearby towns that had been facing drought. Many humans were amazed and grateful. The Kisotes contributed in their own gentle way. They were peaceful thinkers and mediators. Whenever arguments rose among different groups of refugees, or between refugees and humans, the Kisote elders gathered the people in a circle and used calm storytelling to ease anger. Their soft voices and wise words brought peace to many tense situations. Still, challenges grew as the days passed. A mysterious illness began spreading among the Syrian population. Their breathing became heavy, and their skin turned pale. Nora and her team worked urgently to understand the disease. It was something new, something humans had never seen before. One evening, Nora discovered the cause while studying samples under a microscope. The illness was a weak but persistent infection that grew in dirty environments. She realized the Syrians needed a specific mineral to fight it, something rare on Earth. She searched through medical supplies but found nothing similar. She felt a wave of fear. If they did not act quickly, the illness could spread to thousands. But then, during a meeting, a Kisot scholar mentioned that a similar mineral existed in certain earth stones. He described them carefully. Nora rushed outside to show pictures to the Kisots. They pointed to a mountain range near the camp. With help from Aiden's unit, she organized a mission to retrieve the stones. They traveled through rough terrain and finally found the mineral in a cluster of glowing rocks. When they returned, Nora crushed the stones and mixed them into a solution. Within a day, the treatment began working, and the Syrians slowly recovered. Many of them touched Nora's hand gently in thanks. As humans and refugees built stronger bonds, the rest of the galaxy watched. Far away, the Zereth Dominion observed everything through hidden probes. The Dominion leaders expected Earth to collapse under the weight of 6 million refugees. They believed humans would panic, fight, and fail. But the opposite was happening. The refugees were beginning to consider Earth a safe home. They spoke of humans with respect, even affection. They admired human kindness, creativity, and cooperation. This deeply disturbed the Dominion. They did not understand compassion. To them, it was weakness. But now, this weakness was creating alliances, unity, and stability, something they did not expect or want. A high-ranking Dominion commander sent a new message across the galaxy. He claimed Earth was becoming a threat because it was gathering influence among refugee species. Other oppressed species were watching Earth closely, hoping they might someday receive help as well. The Dominion began to feel its control slipping. The tension reached a breaking point one evening when multiple Dominion ships appeared at the edge of the solar system. They did not attack, but sent a cold message. They declared that the refugees must be returned to Dominion space immediately. They claimed the refugees were still their property and that Earth had violated galactic rule by keeping them. The message spread panic around the planet. People feared war. Governments held emergency meetings. The refugees trembled at the thought of returning to the Dominion. Many had scars, both physical and emotional. They knew they would face suffering or death if forced to go back. In a large camp near the coast, a group of refugees gathered around Evan, Lena, Aiden, and Nora. A Surian elder spoke through a translator pad. His voice shook as he said they did not want to return. A Varellan engineer added that the Dominion did not see them as people. A Kisot elder simply said that Earth was their first safe home. Evan listened, his eyes heavy with emotion. Lena placed a hand on a Varellan child's shoulder. Aiden stood tall, his jaw set in determination. Nora looked at the frightened faces before her and felt her heart break. Earth could not abandon them. Humanity had opened its doors and its heart. Now, the Dominion wanted to tear these beings away. The leaders of Earth gathered for a long night of discussion. The question was simple but heavy. Should Earth refuse the Dominion's demand? The decision would change the future of humanity. When dawn arrived, the world waited for an answer. The Dominion ships waited too, ready to enforce their orders, and Evan knew a storm was coming. Part 2 closed with fear, hope, and the beginning of a stand that would decide everything. The morning after, the Dominion's warning began with a heavy silence. The world felt frozen, as if waiting for something terrible to happen. News channels showed the same image again and again. A line of massive Dominion warships sitting at the edge of the solar system, unmoving but threatening. Their message was clear. They wanted the refugees returned, and they would not wait forever. Evan Brooks stood inside the Global Response Center, watching the screens with tired eyes. He felt the weight of millions of lives on his shoulders. Around him, world leaders spoke through video calls, arguing and debating what to do. Some believed Earth should stand firm and protect the refugees. Others feared the Dominion's power and worried Earth would be destroyed if they refused. Evan listened to every argument. But in his heart, he already knew what he believed. He thought about the Surian elder who had cried softly when speaking of his home world. He thought about the Varellan children who hid behind their parents whenever they heard loud noises. He thought about the gentle Kisot scholars who held their small hands together in prayer each night, wishing for safety. He could not imagine sending them back to the empire that had treated them like objects. Across the city, Lena Morris worked with a group of scientists analyzing signals from the Dominion ships. Her hands shook slightly each time she touched the controls. She had spent her whole life studying the stars, imagining them full of knowledge. Now she saw a dangerous empire hiding behind that knowledge, one that feared humanity's compassion. She knew the Dominion expected Earth to surrender. They believed fear was stronger than kindness. But Lena had seen the strength humans could show when they protected something important. She believed Earth had the courage to resist. Aiden Clark stood at the entrance of the largest refugee camp, watching the rising sun paint the sky orange. Refugees gathered around him, whispering in worried voices. Some held their children close, others stood silently, staring at the sky as if expecting enemy ships to appear at any moment. A young Varellan child tugged on Aiden's uniform. The child pointed upward and let out a soft clicking sound of fear. Aiden knelt beside him and spoke gently. He promised that he and many others would protect them. The child pressed his forehead lightly against Aiden's arm, a sign of trust in Varellan culture. Nora Hale had barely slept. She walked through the medical tents, checking on patients who were recovering from their illnesses. Many of them asked her the same question. Would they be forced to return? Nora could only shake her head and say she did not know, but she promised she would fight for them. When she stepped outside, she saw a group of Surians sitting in a circle. Their skin shimmered faintly in the morning light as they hummed a soft, sad song. The sound carried across the camp, full of longing and fear. Nora felt tears forming, but she wiped them away. She refused to show despair. She needed to be strong for everyone who depended on her. By midday, The world leaders reached a decision. They asked Evan to deliver the message to the Dominion. Evan stepped in front of a global broadcast screen, straightened his jacket, and took a deep breath. Billions of people watched. Millions of refugees listened in silence. His voice was calm but firm. He said Earth would not return the refugees. He said they were not objects to be handed back. They were living beings with hopes, fears, and families. He said Earth did not follow the path of cruelty. Earth followed the path of compassion. And compassion, he said, was not weakness. It was strength. He ended the broadcast with a simple message. Earth would protect the refugees. The response from the Dominion came within minutes. Their cold mechanical voice echoed through communication channels. They called Earth's choice unlawful and foolish. They warned Earth that refusal would lead to punishment. Then the signal cut off. Fear spread across the planet. People rushed to gather their families. Governments moved their defenses into position. Military forces prepared shields around major cities. The refugees panicked, believing the Dominion would arrive to reclaim them by force. Aiden's unit worked day and night to keep the camps calm. He spoke to refugees, assuring them Earth would not abandon them. When he saw fear in their eyes, he felt his resolve harden. He was willing to defend them with everything he had. Lena analyzed the movement of the Dominion fleet. The ships were moving closer. Slowly, but steadily. It was not an attack yet, but it was a warning. She sent updates to Evan and the world leaders. She knew this moment would shape humanity's future. While scientists and soldiers worked, something unexpected began happening around the world. Thousands, then millions of ordinary humans stepped outside their homes and walked to the refugee camps. They brought blankets, food, water, toys, and medicine. They formed human chains around the camps, standing shoulder to shoulder in peaceful protection. In city after city, people held up signs saying things like, "They are our guests, and we will stand together." It was not a military defense. It was a human one. Aiden stood on top of a small hill overlooking the camp and watched as more people arrived. He felt hope rising inside him like a warm flame. Humans from different countries and cultures were joining hands. It was a powerful message. They were telling the Dominion that Earth would not bend to fear. The refugees watched this with wide, emotional eyes. Many cried softly. Others bowed their heads toward the humans standing for them. A Kisot elder whispered that this was something he had never seen in his life. A world choosing kindness over fear. Around this time, Nora discovered something important. When she checked a Syrian patient with a strange breathing pattern, she realized the patient was under extreme stress. Many refugees were showing signs of trauma because they feared being taken back. Nora gathered medical teams and explained that emotional health needed the same attention as physical health. She worked with Kisot scholars to organize small circles where refugees and humans could talk. Some shared stories of their suffering. Others shared stories of hope. Slowly, fear began to settle, replaced by a quiet strength. Meanwhile, in the depths of space, the Dominion prepared for the next step. Their commander believed Earth was bluffing. They expected humans to surrender once they showed their full power. They sent a small fleet to move closer to Earth, intending to frighten the planet into submission. But something unexpected happened. Signals from other star systems began appearing. Several oppressed species who had suffered under the Dominion sent messages supporting Earth. They declared the Dominion had no right to demand the return of those who had escaped cruelty. They warned that if the Dominion attacked Earth, they would reveal all of the Dominion's abuses to the galaxy. This shocked the Dominion. Their reputation had always been one of fear, but now fear was turning into resistance. More signals came from distant planets. Small governments, traders, and even former Dominion soldiers sent messages saying they supported Earth's decision. They admired humanity's bravery and compassion. Evan watched these messages roll across the screen with disbelief. Earth, a small planet in a quiet corner of the galaxy, had become a symbol of courage. The Dominion commander grew angry. He sent a threat to Earth, saying they would attack if the refugees were not surrendered immediately. This time, Evan responded with a simple message. His voice was firm and steady. He said Earth did not fear threats. Earth would protect the innocent, even if it meant standing against a giant. Lena watched from the communication room. She felt her chest tighten with pride. Aiden heard the message from the camp and stood taller. Nora listened to it and felt a renewed strength. The Dominion fleet moved closer, but then it stopped. Their sensors detected something unusual. On Earth's surface, more than 100 million humans and refugees stood together around major cities, linked hand in hand, forming peaceful human shields. The Dominion had never seen anything like this. They were prepared for war, not for unity. The commander hesitated. An attack on Earth now would spark rebellion across the galaxy. They were already losing influence. If they acted violently, many other species might join Earth. The Dominion was powerful, but not powerful enough to fight the entire galaxy at once. Slowly, one by one, the Dominion ships began turning away. On Earth, the tension broke like a sudden breath after a long silence. People watched the screens as the ships shrank into small lights and finally disappeared into the dark sky. Earth had won without firing a single shot. Cheers and cries filled the camps. Humans hugged refugees, and refugees bowed in gratitude. Children danced. The world rejoiced. Evan stood in the center of a refugee camp surrounded by cheering families. He felt exhaustion lift from his shoulders. He looked at Lena, who smiled with relief. Aiden wiped sweat from his forehead, his heart full of pride. Nora was surrounded by Surians and Kisotes thanking her. Later that evening, the world leaders held a special meeting with representatives from refugee species. They made a historic decision. The refugees would be allowed to stay on Earth as free residents. They would receive education, work opportunities, and protection. Soon after, the Galactic Council invited Earth to take an official seat. They said humanity had shown leadership not through weapons, but through compassion. Evan traveled with Lena, Aiden, and Nora to a huge gathering where humans and refugees celebrated under bright lights. There were songs, dances, and shared meals. Children from different species played together without fear or judgment. It looked like a new beginning. As Evan watched the joyful scene, he felt a deep sense of peace. Nearby, Lena gently helped a young Surian read human symbols. Aiden lifted a laughing Varellan child onto his shoulders. Nora showed medical students how to treat mixed-species patients. The sky above them was clear and calm. Earth had passed its greatest test. The Dominion had tried to punish humanity by giving them 6 million refugees. But instead of breaking, humanity had risen stronger. Earth had chosen compassion, and compassion had changed the galaxy.